Happy holidays. Well, I appreciate everyone getting together with the on the verge of many people leaving for a holiday break, I hope, and a chance to enjoy family and friends. We thought it'd just be good to sit down for a few minutes with the fine members of the press corps and have a discussion about the end of the year and some of the things that took place during the year and answer a few questions. I'd just kick it off. I think 2012 was a very active year, and I think we accomplished a lot. And to put it in context, the goal is to reinvent our state. If you step back and look, I don't think any Michiganders want to return to the Michigan of 2008, 2009. We are at the bottom. And it called for reinvention because the old ways of doing things simply weren't adequate nor working. And so we've stepped up and taken a new approach. And it's about really focusing on creating a better environment for success, customer service government. And so 2011 was very momentous. In 2012, we continued that path, and I'm proud of a number of the accomplishments. And actually, normally, as you know, I don't even use notes quite often. I had to make a list because there's quite a few items. And I'm not going to go through this entire list. But some of them are really important. On the jobs front, I think one of the things that was really momentous is moving forward with the bridge, the new international trade crossing, signing the agreement with Canada, because that was a topic that had been out there for years and will ultimately lead to tens of thousands of long-term trade-related jobs in our state. Personal property tax reform. I really appreciated Mayor O'Reilly's comments yesterday that this was a project that was 30 years in the making, that will make our cities more competitive. Regulatory reform. We've eliminated over 880 net rules in our state. We're getting rid of 13 rules for every one rule we've added. And unemployment insurance is something that will really show up next year. But we did a multi-billion-dollar bond deal to really change the format of how we're doing things in the state that will benefit all employers and in turn allow them to hire more people. So many things on that front. On the people front, because again, we have to think about we still have people in need in our state. One of the things I'm really excited about that has started, but will show its full effect more in 2013 is Pathways to Potential. The concept of moving social workers from government offices and putting them in the public elementary schools. We've already got over 20 schools done. We're focusing on Flint, Pontiac, Saginaw, and Detroit. We should have over 120 schools done by springtime. We had a conference, a summit on infant mortality. We had a conference on the disabled. We had the autism legislation. So we had many good things to help our citizens in that regard. The cities, that's a focus area that we've shown progress in. Public safety. We've graduated one new trooper school, another trooper school is underway. We put more resources in, again, the cities in greatest need, Flint, Pontiac, Saginaw, and Detroit. We're working hard to improve the situation there. Detroit lighting got done in terms of that legislation. The RTA, another project that was 40 years in the making. We're going to move forward with that. Virtual cities is an important project that got launched, which is the concept about doing backroom services and getting cities to collaborate. And I want to thank cities for stepping up and leading that effort, the cities of Grand Rapids and Livonia in particular. And we did progress on blight. We put a number of resources to tear down structures that shouldn't exist and repair other ones that can be used. So good things there. Good government was a focus, and I mentioned that in last year's State of the State. MIPSR's reform is huge, along with the other reforms we've done in the state retirement system. We've essentially taken in the range of $20 billion off the balance sheet or got a plan to pay down $20 billion in liabilities. That's a major accomplishment, and at the same time we're going to have a system that our employees, whether they be in the state or in the public sector, can have better reliance and confidence that they're going to have a funded system. We've done long-term reforms in that area. One exciting one I thought was very cool that I want to compliment the Lieutenant Governor on was bureaucracy busters, which is to get our workforce more engaged at the state level. We had over 17% of our workforce participate in an online idea pool. They came up with over 1,000 ideas. We had over 100,000 votes on these ideas, and we're implementing the top 3. And we're going to continue that progress. Education is an area that we also made progress on. We started the teacher evaluation pilot in terms of working through that. Dual enrollment we did legislation on. Performance metrics for schools. And the EAA got launched with 15 schools in Detroit. And the last one I'll mention is just on the image side and the feelings about Michigan. Pure Michigan continues to be a big success. It's great. I get positive feedback from all across the country hearing about, those are wonderful ads. We got to come to Michigan. And that's something we need to build on. So we got a lot done this last year, but as I always say, I'm neither content nor complacent with where we're at. We're going to keep up relentless positive action, no blame, no credit, just solving problems into 2013, and I'm fired up for another year. So with that, let me stop there and just open it up for questions.
Governor, I don't think I heard right to work on your list. Many people are talking about the well being poisoned for the next 2 years. Do you believe that this is going to work itself out on its own, that people will get back to a collaborative working relationship, or do you have to do something specifically now to bring people back together in the wake of that?
I think we already saw progress, and that's why I thought it was great, the press conference in Detroit a couple days ago, when we were I was able to sign the bills for regional transit and Detroit lighting. At those press conferences, the speakers I had joining me were Bert Johnson and Maureen Stapleton on both those issues, because those were cases where Democrats voted with Republicans to put in legislation. And so that's the start of the process to bring people back together, to say we're looking beyond just people saying they're fighting, but we should be looking to service our citizens, because what really matters is customer service to our citizens, not hard feelings over some other particular issue. But it's something we're going to have to keep working. I don't want to minimize it. It is something. But I think people are going to see that unions are going to keep going in Michigan, workers are going to have more choice, and we're going to have more jobs in Michigan because of that legislation. So the real proof will come as we see more jobs come to our state, and that things can continue to operate where people can work together.
Governor, do you think Detroit is headed for an emergency manager?
Well, I'm waiting for the report of the review team. There's obviously a lot of speculation on that because of their financial condition. They're in a crisis. They have been in a crisis, and the crisis is getting worse every day. So that's where I just continue to encourage the mayor and city council to get together, work together, and do as many things as possible. And I'll wait for the review report, which will be early January to mid-January.
There are people who wonder, when do you run out of patience on that?
I would say I wouldn't use running out of patience. I think we need to take action. And that action will get taken in one fashion or another, hopefully in the most constructive, positive way possible.
Governor, I know you don't like questions about yourself, but I'm hoping you'll indulge me with one in the Christmas spirit. How do you think you've changed over the last 2 years?
Grayer, older, wiser. I mean, I had a good start already, but I probably added a few gray hairs. But as a practical matter, no, I've learned a lot. And I always want to learn. That's part of, I use the phrase that I'm proud to be a nerd. And part of that is one thing, the day I stop learning is the day I'm probably going to die. Because you want to learn something new every day, and that's something I aspire to, and I've learned a lot in this position, and hopefully I'm going to continue to get better at it.
You've said right up to the last few days that you're a non-politician. Well, are you a politician now, a learning politician, a journeyman politician?
What I would step back and look at that. By the very definition of being governor of a state, it's probably fair to say I'm a politician. To say, I think a fair statement in response to that is I would describe myself as I am not a career politician. I'm very honored to play a role now where I'm in a political role. I spent most of my career not in that position, and when I'm done being governor, I'm going to go back to being a non-politician at that point.
Are there days that you wish you were back at Gateway?
No. No. And I love Gateway. That was a time of my life too, in terms of saying we were making a difference for that industry and for people, actually consumers, about bringing technology to them. No, Tim, and the reason I say that is this is really about helping people. And this is something that when in your lifetime do you have an opportunity to help essentially 10 million people? And the way I view it is that's why you see the dog year concept really come along, because there's a clock ticking. This is a very finite period of time. I have an opportunity to make the largest difference possible in the most positive way for people I love. This is my state. This is my home. And the way I view it is hey, there's a window here. Go for it. And do all the best you can with as good faith and good conscience as you can.
Governor, what about reinventing the equine industry in Michigan? You got a horse racing bill in front of you. What are you going to do with that?
I need to look at that because that was one that we weren't tracking especially closely, but I understand it did go through, and that will be part of my holiday period. That I am going to be out of the office to some degree, spending time with friends and family, but I would imagine there's going to be a fair amount of time every day over the holiday period where I'll have a stack of homework and some bills to look at.
Governor, following up on Roger's question about the right to work legislation, and lots of people are still mad about that, saying that this is going to carry on for a long time. Can you tell people, look, I know this was a divisive, angry battle here, but this will create more jobs in Michigan, and you're going to know it by when? By next year sometime? I mean, are we going to see more jobs as a result of that?
I think we will. This is a case where the phone's already been ringing at the MEDC since we passed that legislation, saying people are starting to look at Michigan. And again, it would be premature to name particular companies and stuff, but they are getting more inquiries from people that we hadn't heard from to say they weren't looking at us. I spoke with Mike Finney yesterday, and he said there's at least one major opportunity that didn't have us on the list to say Michigan's on the list now.
Manufacturing concern?
It would involve manufacturing in some context.
But there's some criticism from the, we'll call it the economic planning shattering class, that you are implementing a lot of policies going after 20th century jobs in manufacturing, lower wage jobs, through getting rid of the PPT industrial tax and right to work. That you're not focusing enough on expanding the knowledge economy.
I don't think those people have necessarily visited a plant in a long time. Because if you go into a plant today, it's not a plant like most people's imagery would be of 1960. You're going in and these people are running computers, they're running CNC machines, they're running robots. You don't walk into one of these plants and have the old concept of, there's a bunch of parts sitting here and you're doing this and that, and there's grease and dirt all over the place. You're walking into an extremely clean environment, a very professional environment with a lot of equipment that's multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment that you have sophisticated training to run those pieces. And that's something that we need to do a better job. This is one of the big things I'm excited about for 2013. The same thing's true of ag, of the timber industry. The concept that the average person still works under is so out of the realm of what the reality is today that we need people to understand they need more training and more background to go run these pieces. My favorite one is the tractor. I went to the Ag Expo this summer and they had me get up in one of the big John Deere tractors and stuff like that, and they started showing me around and they said, okay, Governor, your right hand goes here and each finger on your hand is used to control different electronics and different implementation. So I asked probably the dumb question of the day. I said, okay, does that mean I steer with my left hand? And he looked at me and goes, no, you don't steer. It's like, okay, because you program in the GPS coordinates and the thing drives itself. Use the left hand to do other electronics and other equipment. Once you do that first row or two, then it takes over and does it. It's like, these people are running a $500,000 to a $250,000 piece of equipment, and you need to know what you're doing.
Governor, is it fair for us to report that you worked with Michigan Right to Life to fashion the abortion legislation so that it would be acceptable to you?
We worked with multiple groups on both sides of that issue in terms of getting feedback on what was going into the one bill in particular, 5711.
And you had significant input to, in your mind, improve the bill?
We had input from, again, both sides of the equation in that particular discussion, getting thoughts from all parties.
So could we conclude from that you will sign it?
Again, I haven't seen the final pieces, Tim, because there were amendments and changes being made and stuff like that. So that's where I'm still looking very hard at that bill in particular. And I wouldn't expect that to happen this week still.
1 second, and then we'll go back to you, Peter, over here. I was going to say we have Ed White from the Associated Press who has a question about, I think, what's been known as Kelsey's Law, the cell phone ban, and where we're at with that. You can go ahead. You could just answer that.
Okay. I wondered, you basically said the question, sir. Kelsey's Law. Again, I'm generally supportive of it. I haven't seen the law yet. I would most likely end up signing that law because the concept is a good one. It's a point that really strikes home because it's called Kelsey's Law, and just to put the personal perspective on it is I have a 16-year-old daughter named Kelsey who got her license in August, and I think it's best she's not texting while she's driving. So you can make your own assumption about how that bill's going to go in terms of most likely getting approved.
All right, now back to Peter.
Governor, what, if anything, can the state or should the state be doing to prevent a Newtown-like event here?
Well, I mentioned that. I view there are three fronts that people can have a good, thoughtful discussion on. And only one of those is the guns piece of it. The other two, the school safety policies, again, it appears that Newtown may have done a lot of good things, though, already being on the front edge of school safety policies. But again, it's worth looking at, and I've asked the Michigan State Police to work with the Michigan Department of Education to make a review of that. The biggest one, in my view, is the mental health area. Is to say, obviously, situations like this involve someone that's mentally ill, and it's difficult to say you can stop them either on school policy or guns if someone's truly mentally ill and committed to doing an act like this. So the biggest question is how do we review those policies to say how do we work with our communities to identify people that could be in that profile, and how do we make sure they get treated in the appropriate way on a sustained basis? Because what concerns me on the mental health part of it in some ways is quite often you may find people that have an issue, but they're going to get treated once or sporadically rather than making sure there's some extended time period to know, that there's an area that it is being managed appropriately and treating that person the right way through that process while making sure you're preventing a tragedy like this.
Did you say the other day that you were not going to include the McClellan report in your budget on school aid? Was that reported correctly?
Tim, in terms of the McClellan report, there's a lot of good things in there, and we're getting a lot of good feedback from the public, and it's doing what I intended it to do. It's not our proposal per se, but a good, smart person went out and got a lot of good input and is getting more input. I tend to think it'll probably be after that with the Education Summit more, that would be a good place to bring those thoughts together and have a more focused discussion on that. And that Education Summit's more timed for April.
But originally you wanted to include that in your budget, didn't you say that?
Yeah, but again, this is something you look at and say, even I have some parameters on how quickly and how many projects we want going at one point in time.
Would you support municipalities, cultural institutions, and corporations running charter schools?
Haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about that because, again, there is flexibility in charters in terms of the universities being in chartering schools and such. It's just something that would have to be analyzed.
To the Connecticut tragedy, you say that mental health is a main focus, but on the gun issue, is it time to move to limit the mega clips of ammunition and assault rifles and the sheer firepower that people can get now? Is it time to scale that back and change gun laws?
What I would say on that is it's clear that that's being identified as a national discussion issue, a federal issue that the president wants to take on and have a broad dialogue about. And the way I view it is if it's being discussed at some level, and I think it's an appropriate topic for people to go have a back and forth on, if they're doing it at the federal level, I think that's a good place that be done, and I'm going to continue on other issues at the state level and see how that discussion progresses.
State initiatives on this, you would not be moving in this direction on?
Not when the federal government's already, they've sort of said this is an area they want to take and really make a major dialogue before all the public. And again, it's something not to ignore, to watch and monitor, but as a practical matter, if they're taking the leadership on that issue, I'm going to always go back to the focus on jobs and kids.
Governor, you put a lot of things in place the last 2 years, and you just indicated what you really are planning for 2013. Forgetting about politics and elections and all that stuff, realistically, how long do you think it would take for this stuff to really start to pay off economically here in Michigan with jobs, lower unemployment, everything else? I mean, generally speaking, a result of a lot of activity still doesn't yield results overnight. What do you think realistically as a businessman, somebody in the private sector, how long would you generally think people would have to wait to really see the result and the benefit of what you've tried to do?
Yeah, there are a lot of pieces of this. Some actually are already happening, so it's a gradual thing. So it's not like it's a light switch thing where all of a sudden, poof, it's all working. So a lot of it is actually starting to show up, and what I would describe it as is kind of an accelerating curve. You're going to see less And as time passes, it will start layering and adding on one another, so it will build. So it's the snowball kind of effect. It starts as that little snowball, but by the time it gets down to the big hill, it can have a huge impact. And to see the biggest part of the impact, it could be several years, and most likely will be, to take full impact. And one of the reasons I say that, Bill, is it's not just what happens in Michigan, it's how it's really responded to by the rest of the country. And that's one of the things we do need to do more work on, is how we market all the things that have been accomplished and really make that message clear, because perceptions tend to lag probably about 5 to 10 years. And you saw it, you can see it in the national news today. If you go ask some national commentators to describe Michigan, they're still describing the Michigan of 2008, 2009. So if you look at it, that's one thing I want to be more proactive on in 2013 and 2014, is to say we need to do a better job of communicating that that's not the Michigan of today. It was much like Chad's question earlier about the factory floor. The factory floor of today looks nothing like the factory floor of the past, but what percentage of the population still has that old image? So I think we're going to continue to see good progress, and the more we can spread the word and the message, the better off we are. One program that's actually been it's small today, but I'm excited about, that the business leaders of Michigan have sort of taken up, that I've cooperated with them and I've encouraged them to do it, is they have something called the Ambassadors Program, where they're finding sort of expatriate Michiganders that are now out of state, that are very successful people, that are doing good things, but they're thought leaders in many ways. And they've done a couple times where they've gotten them together. And I've actually spoken to some of those groups about, what's going on in Michigan, and it's amazing to watch the difference from what they walked in to how they feel when they walk out, because they still want to help the state. They're proud of Michigan. And we just need to make sure they understand all the good stuff we've done, because then they can be an ambassador for us to carry that word back, which can help lead to even more good economic activity.
Governor, thank you. We're out of time. Any closing comments? And then we'll be here as resources afterwards for everyone too.
Yeah, the closing comment, and I'll make this in particular to the press corps and such more than the general public, is I really want to say thank you. And I appreciate our working relationship. That's something I always encourage you to give us feedback on. Are we being accessible, available? Are we trying to be open and having a dialogue and discussion? Because I view this as an important relationship. Just to go to the same point as the last point, one of the important things in my view is the more I have opportunities to communicate with the citizens of Michigan, the better off we all are. Because too often people have different perspectives, and they can take positions that they may not have all the facts or all the information, and by having an opportunity to share that, I think we all gain. So quite often the more we talk, the better off we are. And I appreciate the opportunity to work with you. And then just on a last note, I really encourage you to have a great holiday period. I'll try to be as quiet as possible, so you'll have a chance to relax and not have to do things and enjoy family and friends. So with that, happy holidays.
Thank you.